The giraffe's an inanimate object, it'll help.
Does it look like I'm looking at something that's not there?
No, you look like very mystical, like pondering,
Okay.
like really pondering things.
Okay.
So, Nicole,
Hi.
if you can please just tell us a little bit about what's been the hardest things that you've had to deal with in your life and how you've overcome them.
Well, there's lots, and I was trying to brainstorm, but in the end I came up with life, which sounds really sad, but the whole thing in itself was probably the hardest. Everyone thinks that the main part that was hard for me was all of the significant moments, like when I was in hospital for anorexia, or when I was recovering from OCD, or suicidal, or whatever those parts, but mainly it's the parts in between that were the hardest for me. And because those are the parts where you're on your own, well, not on your own, that sounds really sad, but where it's really up to you, you have to decide to get better. When I was about 13, I was really happy and really hyper and really crazy if you knew me then. And then something happened and I just was not myself anymore. And I went through some hard stuff and my OCD got worse, and eventually I got so into it that it became my whole life. And what happened was that I became very occupied in trying to help my friend who was sick, and I became real obsessed with that, just because I so wanted to let go of the idea that I was sick myself, and I took it way too far, and eventually when I went to university, then I had started my course in architecture. And then I got sick and had to stop, and it was awful because for my whole life I knew I wanted to be an architect, and after a week in architecture I was there already, like, out and in hospital and stuff, and it was awful, and I felt so behind. But the thing is that you're not really behind in those times, you're just catching up with yourself. Well, I remember I kind of blocked out a lot of what happened. I never thought I'd be the sort to block out things, but I kind of blocked out a lot what happened during those days, so I can't really give a good account of what happened. But basically I started in one place, then got moved to different places, and eventually at one point they just took me to North Shore, and it was really scary because there's some moments where basically you don't feel human anymore, and that's the scariest part, because there's one thing about not feeling yourself, but not feeling human is the hardest. And but then there were lots of really nice people in my life too. Like, for some reason I was put in where like all the elderly people were, so it was just me and these bunch of elderly people, and they were so cute. But after that I had a lot of panic attacks, and I was very much on edge, and I lost everything. That's what I mean by the hardest parts were not when I was sick and in hospital and stuff. The hardest parts were after and in between, because that's when all the things that I had stable in my life completely disappeared, and it really shakes you, because it doesn't feel... You never even dream of those things happening, and then it just does, and you're left, and you have to make the decision to stay. You have to make that decision. Even if it's for a tiny thing, you can even like hear a song or look at the sky and like, oh, this is this moment that I'm feeling really special, and this is the sign that I have to live. Just make a sign for yourself. Sometimes you've got to fight for yourself, and eventually, once you fight for yourself, then you become aware of all those who are fighting with you. And one of the things that was really big for me was learning how to be vulnerable, because you think to get somewhere and to overcome something, you have to be really strong and have your head in the right place and be really decisive and confident about what you want to do. But sometimes the best thing you can do is be vulnerable, to allow yourself to break down and rebuild yourself, because that's how you're going to heal. You need to become aware and acknowledge that, hey, I need help.
Dealing with OCD, I know, I think, myself included, before I had it explained to me, I know a lot of people think, like when they'll be like, oh, you're so OCD about it, but they really don't understand what OCD means. What would you say, how would you describe OCD to them?
So, that's a big thing. Well, with OCD, it's so easily dismissed, and that's pretty sad, because no one means for it to be like that. But I remember one time I was at this wedding, and at the reception, this girl was talking about how she had to have her bed set perfectly, and when she makes her bed in the morning, and they're like, oh, so you're really OCD, and I'm like, how can you call someone you're really obsessive compulsive disorder? That doesn't even make sense. That's it really frustrated me, because by that stage I was also not diagnosed, and it was just so cast aside like it was nothing. And I thought, well, I'm just making a big deal about this and I don't need help, because, I mean, everyone has OCD. But eventually you realise that OCD borders into so many different things. There's also different types. There's obsessive compulsive disorder and obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which is when you have like the need to keep things neat and tidy and all that sort of stuff. But there's a big difference between them. One's really induced by anxiety and one's just a personality trait. A bit into anorexia, because I didn't really go into that, and that was a huge part of my life, so let's go into that. Basically, like I was saying, there were parts where I didn't feel human anymore, and I hated the fact when everyone's like, oh, this is anorexia talking. That's the most belittling, awful thing when people said that. But in reality, there was so many aspects of it. It was just not me anymore. I remember most scary times that I haven't blocked out was one day. This was the day before I went into hospital, and I remember they had a syringe of this liquid stuff that I was supposed to eat, because I just wasn't eating food, and they tried to syringe it into my mouth, and they had a towel around my neck, and I just felt like an animal. And I haven't really told many people about that, because it's not human. You don't do that to people. You don't even do that to animals. I wouldn't do that to my dog. And it's all done out of kindness, but it's so... People get really desperate in these situations. It's not because they don't love you, it's because they're so worried, and you feel completely fine, and you're wondering why you're being pushed around in a wheelchair. You don't feel like, my legs aren't broken. Why is this happening to me? Why is an 18-year-old being showered by another person? And yeah, you kind of lose yourself a lot. But trying to build yourself up from that and remind yourself who you are is really important. I had my 18th birthday in the mental unit place, CFU, and yeah, it was really important for me that it didn't become this party I was having in the hospital. It was just my friends coming to visit me. We played pool, we watched some animals, and yeah, it was just like a normal birthday, because I remembered they came for me, not to visit me. It wasn't a visiting, it was because every year we celebrated our birthdays.
So if you were to give anyone else advice, if maybe they were dealing with OCD or anorexia or anything like that, what would be your advice to them?
Don't forget who you are. Remember who you are, even when you feel like you've lost yourself completely. Don't forget that you're still human and you still deserve love, and you still deserve to be here. Allow yourself to grow, allow yourself to become vulnerable, to change, to difference, to new opportunities. You have to fight for yourself as much as anyone else would fight for you. You have to fight for yourself too. And if you feel like you can't do it, just fake it. Really, just try until you can convince yourself that you have a right to be here. Because everyone has a right to be here, even if you've literally lost everything in your life, everything. There's more to come. I don't believe in moments where you're at the peak of your life. I don't like that. I don't like the saying that you're at the peak of your life, because I don't believe there's a peak in your life. There's moments in your life that go up and down, and waiting for this peak in your life can take everything away from you. Because you think once you get to your lowest, you think, oh, now this is when I'm going to rise, this is when my moment's going to happen. But that's not how it works. There's just, you're constantly going to go up and down, and there's no particular moment where you're like, this is the climax of my life, this is the best that's going to happen in my life, because you never know what's there for you. You can't predict it, and sometimes you just have to live and see what happens.
Cool. Thank you.
It's all good.